for being here. It's my goal to spread and sort of broadcast all of the great work that's happening in the Wharton Behavioral Lab. There's so many incredible scholars connected to it, and the research team supporting work in the Wharton Behavioral Lab is incredible. And one of the stars in the Wharton Behavioral Lab is Robert Botto. Thank you so much for leading us.
Great. So started Robert Botto. We talking about large language models. I'm mostly going to be talking about ChatGPT today. This slide says part. We last month talked initially about things like GPT in the hands of our participants who are building out surveys, who are participating in research online, and what we can do to identify that, and what we can do to data quality issues. This part, we're going to talk more about our usage. Like, we also have access to these tools and what we can do in behavioral research, what kind of applications are on the horizon with them, what we're already maybe using them for. And we're going to talk a lot about what Wharton specifically has access to, which is ChatGPT. That's being a little fussy. Let's go. The mouse might be the best way to do this. Yeah, okay. So AI. So when we're talking about AI these days, mostly referring to large language models. We'll get into some of the details of what those are in a little bit. And GPT is probably the most familiar to everyone. So it is just one implementation, one type of LLM from one company, OpenAI. There's a company that Wharton has partnered with to create an enterprise service. For us, what enterprise service means, let's do it. There's the prompt you probably have used if you've gone to chatgpt.com. The main thing we get from that enterprise service is that we can log in with our pen keys, and your interaction with the GPT is secure, which means your data is not used to train GPT. So that's very important. When you're using it, look at the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You should see that pen shield. If you don't, go back and log into ChatGPT. So here's a bigger picture of that whole screen. When you're online on gpt.com, on the left-hand side, the top, you have choices of different GPTs, different models, and we'll talk about how you can build your own custom GPTs there. Your history of chat, different chats are over there. In the top right, you have different settings, and then down at the bottom is where you interact. You can, you probably do this already, you type in your question, you type in whatever you want the GPT to then complete. You can upload a file. This is sort of new. You can search the web. So that's a new feature that I think was added recently. I haven't played with that too much. That's important if you want it to do things like, I mean, a base GPT, if you ask it what day it is, it has no idea. Like, it has no context of like what now is. I think that OpenAI adds a lot of things to it, and this web search is one that allows it to go out and ground its answers in information now, and like what's new, and even what now is. I think all of that is important context for use. Now, when you're interacting with it, what OpenAI is doing is it's crafting a prompt. The way that these things work is it's just using it's using relationships between words and natural language processing to take a bunch of words as input, and then using a probability model to just continue that string of words. And that often looks like a very plausible, very good answer to a question, for example. So how does it create that prompt? What OpenAI is doing is it's layering a bunch of things that it knows about the question you're asking right now. Most importantly, what you just typed in. That's the most important thing. If you're in a single chat session, and here, what you just typed in. But we'll layer that with the questions you were just asked a minute ago, a few minutes ago, that's part of that same chat history. Also, any files you might have uploaded, any information it might have pulled from the web if you did a search. But then importantly, also a context history. And when it refers to context history, that's every time you've logged into that account, it remembers things about you, remembers questions that you've asked it. It remembers especially things you've asked it multiple times. It has internal rules to decide what's important about this user I should remember and sort of include in all of these prompts. It layers those together, builds a prompt, passes that to GPT, then you get the back. So a lot is happening behind the scenes more than just like the sentence you typed in. And so right here that, yeah, maintains this coherent session by recalling everything in current chat and previous chats you might have had. So I tried to illustrate this with this sort of gradient here to illustrate that information is sort of leaking into the context and leaking back into chats, into this persistent memory. So the chat is sort of the session, what you're doing now. The context is this persistent data store that just remembers a lot about you. I'm bringing this up because it's important, it's useful. It's also can be it can cause little issues too. So I've never told ChatGPT anything about myself. But I thought the other day, I'll ask it what field I work in. And this is in a fresh chat with no other session chat context. Research, data analysis, market research, data science, behavioral research, that's pretty good. That last sentence could probably be in my LinkedIn profile. Like that, it really definitely figured me out. And that's convenient. But it also can create sort of an echo chamber. So maybe you're asking about statistical method and you keep harping on, I don't know, like Bayesian methods or something like that. And you think, I didn't really think that would be a good application here. But then you realize that maybe a month ago, you were asking it a lot about Bayesian methods. So then it kind of like will echo back the things that it'll confirm things that you've already talked about. So just always keep that in mind. And you can control for that a little bit. One way you can control for it is just by telling it, hey, forget things I talked about. You can go to your settings and clear everything out too if you really need to like draw the bomb on it. I think it also has like a temporary chat thing, which gives you a little bit more control. But just something to remember that there's a lot of layering of past context that it sends the GPT every time you interact with it.
If you delete a set of prompts on that left thing,
It's still there.
it's still there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that does not remove it from the context. Unless I think it was a temporary chat. I think that might be a way to work around it. Yes.
Oh, about this, there's an interesting prompt I saw some time ago. It's if you ask GPT to roast you based on your past conversations, it's going to do that. It's kind of funny to see what's the output.
Yeah. It's remembering a lot about you.
Right. Like things you don't even remember yourself. And
Totally. Yeah. I think I noticed this. I didn't know about this, and then I was asking for some example of something, and it gave like facial expression analysis. It's like an example of something. I thought, well, it has to be remembering that from something else I wrote because that's a very specific example. In addition to just using that page, you can use the prompt that you see when you first log in. You can create custom GPT. Again, what that's doing is just giving you more control over the context with which it's building a prompt. So when you you can go to my GPTs, you can hit create, you can upload files up to 20, and there's just probably a file size limit on those. But it will use data from those files when crafting the prompt. And actually, we will look at an example of this a little bit later on. So the main benefits is it's an isolated context that you have told it what to remember. You've told it explicitly what to remember. It also has some programming hooks. So if you want to connect to APIs, do some other things, it gives there are a few more features added to it that allow you to do so.
Maybe do you mind just like explaining what you mean by APIs?
Yeah. So an API is an application programmer interface. That is a very general term that is usually using a networking protocol like so we might call a service that exists somewhere on the internet with URL and say get data. So the really simple example would be like the weather. There's probably a service somewhere you can call and say, what's the weather right now in Philadelphia? And it has some specific URL, maybe some parameters passed into it, like the location, and it will return information. And that's the kind of API we're talking about here. It could be other things. It could be data from other agencies. It can be data from, it can even be data that you're pushing. You could even, it works in the other direction where you can save data to another source, maybe. And that could be one way to use. But APIs in this case just means services online that either read or return data. And then again, if it returns data, that again becomes part of this prompt in this context.
Maurice, sorry. From software development, one of the nice sort of explainers for API is that it creates the ability to exchange data between technology stacks that might be very different, right? So it's really a sort of portal for data that's technology agnostic.
And certainly we use that here a lot. I mean, Qualtrics has APIs, Canvas has APIs, and these are ways that these systems we can then, or Salesforce has APIs, we can integrate data up and build like multi-service applications. Little drawing then of like what your context sort of like, schematically might look like when you've built a custom GPT. It's isolated per user. So, if I share this with you, we're not going to be sharing our data, but it will learn from each individual chat, but then it can also, again, incorporate its web services in those knowledge files that I've uploaded. So one more advanced use of it. I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, you can finish what you're saying.
That's it. I was about to move on.
Oh, well, I just had a question about, since Penn kind of owns this, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like privacy with it, because I understand it's like our information's not being fed into the broader metaverse of GPTs or whatever, but let's say a student, for example, I'm TA in a class, a student I suspect is using ChatGPT to cheat. Is it the kind of thing where later Penn can use what chats they've had as evidence against them? Like, I think that's something I don't, like for a lot of things, I don't like using Penn's thing because I just think my employer now like knows everything I'm asking about or.
What I know is that technically that is possible within a window of, I think, about 30 days. Yeah, everything is saved. But there is a window after which it's deleted.
But do you have the right to access, like what if a student uses it for therapy?
That's a question for like general counsel. Like, I actually have no idea what's written into the contract. I can't imagine this has been sorry, but technically, yes.
Ist jetzt umgelegt worden, das Essen?
Hello. Max. What's up, Max? Hey. Hey, Max.
Yeah.
Do you have a question? Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
But if you read in, suppose that I read in 10 articles that I've written, and then I give it an outline and I say, okay, use this same tone and integrate these papers. It could,
I mean, yes,
it could draft something.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a common use for it. I think write a lot of the same types of things frequently, like recommendation letters or something. We'll do that, and we'll even upload their own work to get and say you are an administrative assistant somewhere and you write on behalf of someone else. You're almost certainly using it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Always proofread. We'll see more. There's complicated trust relationship, I think, between users of GPT and what GPT actually is. You really have to keep an eye on. So what we've been talking about is building prompts, and that's how we're interacting with GPT. There's a field called prompt engineering that this is all part of. Now, we're just relying on OpenAI's implementation of prompt engineering. It's not asking us to know much about it. It's just inferring from our behaviors and our use, how it's going to then engineer prompts. You can take some control over that. One of them, you can add structure to your instructions. You can say, respond in some exact format or something like that. And one of the ways that, one very common method for this is called few-shot learning, where basically you give as prompts the type of prompt you'll give and then the type of answer you want returned. Draft a couple of those, preface your chat with that, and then ask questions of that same variety, and you'll get answers much closer to the example answers that you gave. This is one way to gain a little bit more control over the context of what it returns. You'll just see that a lot. Part of, I think, the whole point of this talk is to present some language and ideas that you start investigating models. These are things you'll hear about a lot. And few-shot learning, and even zero-shot learning, that's what they refer to. If you just don't use few-shot learning, you're doing zero-shot. And that's just when you're using GPT. And that's actually a good benchmark that often models are measured on. How good are they at general task completion or problem solving or question answering with zero-shot learning? That's like an important benchmark to show how general and deep the sort of knowledge is that GPT is capable of.
So like in rec letters, it'd be saying, okay, here are 5 example rec letters.
Yeah, it's more used more if you're saying, like, say you want summaries of academic papers because you have no time to read them all. You might say, here's a paper, give me a summary. Here's an example of a good summary. And maybe here's like 4. And then give it a new paper and say, give me a summary. And hopefully it will have learned some semantics and some structure from the examples you gave it, that it will then return something similar. Then as we get kind of getting more and more along, like more control, more advanced uses, through Wharton, you can get access to the OpenAI API. So this is also an API, but this is an API that allows external applications to communicate with OpenAI, ChatGPT, to do things like chat completion. This allows you to build other rules. You can do your own dynamic prompt engineering then, not relying on OpenAI. You can filter outputs. You can build all kinds of rules into it. Just as a note, OpenAI platform API accounts are totally separate from your GPT, even though they're both in the same company. Wharton Computing can help set you up if you need that, or you can just create your own. But if you want to use Wharton's, I'm pretty sure that the same enterprise agreement that we have for GPT chat applies to all API accounts, this from what I understand. But so anyway, there's some access complications, but if you want to do this, talk to Wharton Computing, they can help you out. From there, you can start building lots of applications. Some of these you can, so getting back to sort of behavioral research and what you might use this for. Some of this you could just use chat, or say reviewing and generating survey questions and data. You could probably get pretty far using chat there. Producing dummy data for testing data processing and analysis and testing validation. You can, again, just use probably chat for that. Doing some exploratory analysis, again, you could upload results and ask it to do some visualizations, very common use. Another thing that we're excited about is this is definitely an API use, using bots in real time to interact with participants. Now you can imagine they could also change a survey or of a simulation of some kind. It could do some kind of monitoring or proctoring. There's all kinds of applications. I'm actually going to hand the presentation over to Lauren to talk about the bot chat application that she's been working on with Maurice and others. So I have your slides here. Oh, let's see if I can get out of here. This keyboard's not working. I can just usually do next and I'll hit this.
Okay.
Good.
So
Go next.
we're doing it with the platform that we're talking about today. It's called busychatbots.com. Maurice is leading it. We have the 2 technical leads of Alex Hirsch and Cyrus Singer. So they are the ones who've been developing this and building it basically from the ground up.
the web design, this might not mean a whole lot to everybody, but it's hosted on Google Cloud platform. The front end, things that people see, like the user interface, is React and Tailwind. And on the back end, where Alex and Cyrus mostly work, they use TypeScript. The AI, you can use interchangeable GPT models. So as better versions of ChatGPT come out, you can switch things. So right now you have the option, I believe it's 3.5 and then 4.0. So that just helps with the fine-grained details of what outputs you're getting. As Robert mentioned, we use the OpenAI, so everything that you put in is fairly protected. You don't have to worry as much about privacy and data concerns. So that's helpful when we want to run studies using participants. So this is a screenshot of what the website looks like when you log on. Right now, we have a beta access key that you need to create your login. But once you have that, you just use your email and password that you create, and it's pretty simple to set up your own account. So what do we use this for? Right now, we're using it to create different AI chatbots. So like bot personas or personalities. They're very customizable, which is great in the grand scheme of like research projects. Right now, there's 2 templates where you can negotiate or you can have a regular conversation. So on the web page, you can sort of see the picture where there's a configuration collection. That's essentially a folder of all the bots that you create. So you can help organize things, keep track of them for different research projects, and you can share them with different people. So if there's a whole team editing different bots, it's really easy just to add access to that. So here's the page of all the chatbots. You can notice that I do have a lot. There are several configurations, and inside you can see the purple 3 little lines. That's like the drop-down menu, and you can see the bots within those configurations there. So for today, we're going to look at the folder reacting to offers. And then inside, this is what that looks like once you click it and you get the drop-down. There are several different bots, so people are working on different ones. This configuration is about when the chatbot swears at you in a negotiation, so it's pretty entertaining. There's a mean swearing bot, so it's aggressive. We're working on a different chatbot that kind of just swears as its own tone, so we want to see if that affects the outcome of the negotiation and the relationship in there. So this, I think, is a screen recording of a video. We can go through what this page looks like. There are a lot of buttons. At the top, you can see the name. You can download the JSON file. There's temperature. That's basically how creative. Okay. So I can just, you can see the different GPT models and what alias you want the bot and the user to be. In the preamble there, that's basically the context, and you're setting the tone for what the bot is going to be talking about. Down in style, you can tell the bot to be really casual. You can give it phrases to use, so examples, and it kind of kickstarts the bot. There's a delay that's helpful to make it seem more realistic. So you're not going to spit back a paragraph from the bot in like 2 seconds. That's obviously going to tip someone off. Underneath, this is the most complicated aspect with conditions. So that's basically pairing if-then statements that can trigger certain behaviors that you'd want in a research study. So I like to say that this is the troll under the bridge that you have to solve the riddle to get through. It's very, very specific. It takes a lot of fine tuning with your wording. So there's offer conditions. You can look for keywords. You can look for message counts. And then you pair that with actions. So at the top, the user made an offer. You want the bot to remember those values so you can keep the conversation going and keep track of all these counter offers. If maybe the bot said something specific and you want a certain behavior, you can pair that as well. So did the bot say, I offer? You want to kind of hijack that. And instead of saying, I offer $10,000, you want the bot to say something snarky with the offer in this instance. So on the next page, there's gonna be examples of transcripts for this mean swearing bot. So you can see like what the user says and what the bot kind of spits out in conversation.
You want to narrate?
I'll let people read, but it's very good at swearing, so that's very fun to see. And even my conversation is in the black font on the left, the bot is on the right in blue. At the end, I tried to end the conversation, I accidentally hit return and it didn't really let me that error. So obviously, that's not the normal negotiation people are expecting. We want to survey them after they have this chat experience. And here's another one. It's very good at being snarky. So this is a negotiation about a used car.
So this one's like just over the top.
Yeah.
But there's one like you can tone it down. So there's one that just like when people make an offer, and it swears in reaction to somebody's offer.
Yes. So that's that if then statement where you can get really specific in your controls that in a language specified condition, for example, you could say, did the user make an offer? You pair that with the action telling the bot to curse at it, basically like, oh, holy crap, that's like a big offer. That's a big price. So it's very fine-tuned. So one other feature on this page are survey functions. So you can embed, yeah.
You want to go?
Yeah, perfect. So at the top, you'll see the red circle, there's a separate web page. If you click on surveys at the top, this is how you can embed something into Qualtrics. We have a separate tutorial on that, but for the sake of today, we'll just talk about once you embed the bot in Qualtrics, what do you do with your output? In Qualtrics, you can export a CSV file, and also on this BusyBots webpage, you have the ability to get the full transcript, and there's timestamps on this conversation. So it's a little bit of work right now, but you can match up the two together. So the CSV files are great for that. And then this is what the survey page looks like. So once again, there's a lot, but there's a survey ID that you can customize. There's the organization just to help you keep track of where you're basically focusing. And then you can see helpful dates and times, and you can download all of these files together. So it's kind of wrapping things up with an ebook.
And Robert, connecting this to the like video recording, like could we have a transcript? I mean, we could have somebody negotiating and do the video recording too, right? So
You just have to mark where the video recording begins relative to the other transcripts, and then yeah, and then you have, as long as you have a time, as long as you have time stamps on each data set, then and you know where they align, then yes.
Right, so like, you know, Becky's negotiating and sort of makes an offer like, oh, how about 13,000? And then Lauren's bot is like, are you effing kidding me?
Right, so we could take video, we could do facial expression analysis in the video, we can export that with a time, with a timestamp, align it with the timestamp here and look for those reactions, yes.
Can we, 2 questions. Eventually, will there be a feature to upload images in the bot?
In the chat.
Yeah.
That might be a better question for like the technical part. I know in Qualtrics you can embed images and then have the chat function. So I'm not sure if you had like an idea about what you wanted to use with the image.
Yeah, like let's say I was interested in studying how people use GPT to edit images from my camera roll. So I'll upload an image in GPT and say like, make it like change the color on this image. I just want to know if the functionality, can we upload image in the chat to get it to do that?
I mean, I don't know that this particular application, like the Busy chatbot, would need to add something like that, but I will say that GPT-4, as you probably know, is a multimodal GPT. Like 3 didn't understand images, wasn't trained on image data. 4 and a lot of others of that generation are, so they I don't think they can do video or audio directly yet. But certainly the space in which relationships between words is sort of embedded, relationships of patches of images is sort of the analog to like a word in a sentence. It's like these patches of images are also embedded in that space to create relationships between images and natural language. So you can certainly do things like that.
Is there a way to convert the images to a way that ChatGPT, the newest model, could recognize? Because I think that model we cannot upload documents or images.
That I don't have an answer for that right now. I'd have to look at that.
Okay, yeah.
Not sure. But in general, most current generation models have image. So that was great. Thank you.
Thank you
This is
so
probably
much.
One of the most mature applications, I think, right now at Wharton, at least in the behavioral space, using chat in real time. And I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So, yeah, thanks for, I mean, this is new. And we're trying to create a platform for us to use AI through the research that we do. And if you have any question, I mean, I just want to sort of create this conversation, create an opportunity for us to connect with the Wharton Behavioral Lab, Wharton Research Computing, also as an incredible resource here too. I want to thank the Wharton Behavioral Lab staff. Thank all of you for coming. But if there are other questions, it's really an open conversation.
I also have like
Thanks for
15 more slides if we want.
Okay. Oh, great. So
Everybody does need to like take off.
yeah, if everybody needs to go, yeah, you're sort of welcome to go. But yeah,
Part 2.2.
part 2, 2.2.
So sticking with application. Oh no, I guess so. In doing some background research on this, doing some literature research, one of the first papers I found maybe a year ago on using generative AI or LLMs. There's a number of papers. This is just one of them. It's not like it's the most groundbreaking or anything, but I like it. Or it's a quick read. It outlines, I think, a lot of the potential applications for LLMs in research. And it was in the Natural Language Processing Journal. These are the broad categories that it outlines. I think I already mentioned a few in the previous slide, but using LLMs to help with survey design, using them to help with sampling. That's kind of the thorniest one. I'll talk more about that. Data cleaning, data analysis, and then doing different types of reporting, visual plotting, formatting of data. It's pretty good at that. So sampling, as I mentioned, why that's there. Let's try to get rid of that. Kind of a real thorny one. I think this is something I'd like to dig into more in the coming months. It really depends on your goal. So if you're using like online labor markets like MTurk to do work with your data, by all means use an LLM. Probably those people are using LLMs anyway, so why pay them? Sentiment labeling, entity recognition, that kind of stuff, LLMs are great for. Now, what if you're doing public opinion sampling or you're actually doing research? One of the motivations of that paper was actually an April Fool's email that Cloud Research sent out. Cloud Research is a company that uses MTurkers, or used to at least. They might probably have expanded beyond that to do online research. They sent an email to everyone on their listserv saying, hey, we can get you samples as large as you want in no time at all. We just feed your survey to ChatGPT and give you the answers. And then they wrote like April Fools. But like anyone who received that, a lot of people who received that, wheels started turning in there. It's like how ridiculous, that's ridiculous. Like how ridiculous is it and why is it ridiculous? And is there some truth to it that's maybe not so much? So it is an interesting question. So if LLMs are encoding a semantic information relationship between words, somewhere in these large models, our behaviors and opinions of the authors of these data also encoded in a way that can be sampled and extracted. I think that's very unlikely, but anything we say LLMs can't do right now, we're going to be proven wrong in a short amount of time. So it's just an interesting question. There's no answers to that question right now. But I will say for sampling for your research, for really simple things, trivial cases, you want to do input validation, you want to test scaling in some process, some data processing centers and things, sure. It's much better at, really good at creating much dummy data or samples data for those kinds of research. One kind of hybrid area that I think is interesting is imputation of missing data. So say you are missing data in data sets. I do think that given that its ability to pattern match pull data from probability distributions means that maybe LLMs could be used to fill in missing data that you might have in the data set. You could even test it, randomly remove a bunch of data from a data set, ask the LLM to fill it in and see how it does. I'd imagine that that's actually a pretty decent application in this area. But survey design, I think, is probably is one of the best uses. So last month when we talked about LLMs, it was about how to build surveys so that bot detection might be a little easier. So what I thought is, here's actually a screenshot of I'm logged into GPT here. And in fact, I think what I'm going to do is sort of semi-live demo here. I'm going to share my web browser. That did not work. Do you want to just do the click share? Yeah. Well, it might be that we're looking at, we're not looking at Zoom here, we're looking at. Zoom, yeah, we're not. Okay, let me do that again. I hit share my browser. We just need to change on this computer of what we're viewing, right? Yes. Okay. Up at the top, if you. Okay, forget it. We'll do click share.
I take this as a personal vindication, by the way, when technologists need technologists.
Yeah, just having a failover. If this doesn't work, it's fine. I can just kind of talk through some potential applications, but it might be helpful to actually scroll through So I'll just preface this. So what I did is I created a very simple survey using a Qualtrics template on like brand recall using Andy or something as an option. What I did is I took that and I wanted to maybe add some of the techniques that we talked about last month to add questions to the survey that would help me identify bots taking. So I don't want to have to write one thing that, I don't want to have to do all that extra work. So what I did is I took my survey, I gave it to ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT really can't go onto the web and look at something. So I find it's best to either print a PDF or like export to doc if you're using Qualtrics and then upload that file. So doing that, now GPT has my survey in its memory. So I asked it, I said, hey, here's a survey with 6 questions. What would you add to this survey to make it easier, I'll just talk through it. We don't need to demonstrate it. So now we're back on the desktop. Oh, so you're on mine. Oh, that is my screen. Look at that. Cool. Yeah, so this is the survey. So it's a real simple thing, just When listening about a Kit Kat, what do you think of when you think of Kit Kat? How do you think of other brands? Something that a bot could really easily fill out and I would have very little idea. So yeah. So rather than have me type, I'll just show you. So here I uploaded the doc. I wrote, I'm concerned about bots taking my survey and would like to be able to identify them. What questions would you add to help? It gives me general ideas, open-ended questions, function check questions, verification. We can do CAPTCHA. So I said, give me real examples I can use in the survey using these 4 examples. So here, in exactly 6 words, describe your ideal Kit Kat. An attention check question. Select more than a year ago, nothing else. So that's a common. Verification through personal preference. So give it a bunch of options about flavors, include something that's ridiculous and maybe that doesn't. And then ask it how easy or difficult to find this. Great. That's helpful. I didn't have to like think too hard about what to add, but I also don't want to type these things necessarily into Qualtrics if I don't have to. So Qualtrics has a template import format that I could programmatically import them into a survey. Now it's not widely used, unlike say Python. Like ChatGPT knows all about Python. I say write a Python script, no problem. I say write a Qualtrics TXT input. There's just not enough information in its training set to know what that even is. So this is a great example where I have this domain information where I want to say, here it is. Here's the information I want you to pull from. Use this specifically. So I created click on it here. So I made a Qualtrics TXT formatter custom GPT. What this does, this has that information that I need, and it'll even prompt me to say format this survey as Qualtrics TXT, or I could ask questions about the documentation. How do I do a multiple choice question? Yes.
Is this the one to use to change the QSF files to TXT or?
So this doesn't. I didn't try teaching it about QSF just because that's so complicated and it's harder to read. But you could do that. And again, there's not enough information, I think, already in its training set to know much about QSF, but the more QSF data you give it and sort of train it to do that conversion, then I think taking this a step further, I think we could do something like that.
Oh, so GPT is able to recognize QSF files if you upload one.
You'd have to upload them and tell them that you have to really instruct it. Again, you have to sort of give it the inputs and the outputs and say, here's what the survey looked like. Maybe here's the document, or like the Word document version of the survey. Here's the QSF representation of it. And then ask it, and it'll get things wrong, but through an iterative process, you could probably get there. So here it is. So I copy and pasted the suggested questions. So I created the custom GPT. Well, first I gave it the document and I said, make this into the TXT format. And here you go. I will tell you, this isn't done yet. There's a lot in here that's correct, but there's a lot in here that's not. Like, for example, there's no end of block. That doesn't exist, but it will make things up like that. So you have to continue iterating it, getting it. But that's the one I gave it. So then I gave it its some attention check. So then it outputted attention check questions for me, what a CAPTCHA might look like. So I could use these. I think I asked it then to merge them all into one survey that I could upload. So this is a multi-step use of GPT to add content to my survey and then to put it into a format that I could automatically to my. Are we at time? Do a part 3 on this. So that all worked reasonably well and was pretty easy to set up. I even asked it to create cognitive reflection test type questions on the topic of Kit Kats. So there's a bunch of Kit Kat teams. It takes factory 50, 50 minutes to make 50 bars, that kind of thing. Yeah, a lot of fun. So I'm gonna go back to the, hey, Bob, I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah. We'll wrap this up in just a few minutes. So with data analysis, it's pretty good. I will say that uploading really messy CSVs, I've noticed it really struggles with. I think that, again, more structured prompting would help with that. I was going to talk a bit about, I think maybe we can save this for another time, but I think it's important to know a little bit about internals of LLMs, what type of LLM a GPT specifically is, what other ones are out there. I'll go through this kind of quickly. This is a very common diagram you'll see. Well, on the left is the, there's an encoder, there's decoder and encoder. There's a lot of layers, these are neural nets. There's a lot of layers to these. There's the tokenization of your input, the embedding in that high dimensional space where you can use distance measurements or angle measurements to determine similarity. And let me just go to the kind of interesting parts. Very good paper on it. So auto encoding are the encoder only ones. These are things like BERT. These are really good. Really good at sentiment analysis, classification, that stuff. Because generally they export, they output sequences the same length as the input. So they're not really great at generating lots of things, but they're really good at understanding. That's kind of their key. Things like GPT are what we call autoregressive ones. Those are they're really good at text generation. This is what you use a lot. This is what you're already used to. There are models that use both encoder and decoders. These are mostly for like text translations. They're sequence to sequence. I think they're really good at summarization. The reason you don't always use this is they're really big and expensive and slower than some of these other types. Glossary of things like if you start looking into models, you're going to run into a lot of this terminology. Training, just to start, you're never going to train a model. Definitely not. Like it costs. Think of the cost of training something like GPT. Think in terms of like tens of millions of dollars. Like that's what. So you can't. It's not feasible to really train models. You can fine tune them in a lot of ways. You can fine tune them on like taking more iterative training steps, but starting with the base weights. You do risk overfitting what you're trying to do, and you can in fact forget things that it already learned. So there are variations on that. Flan is one of them. That's a type. I won't get into details. A type of fine tuning. There are things like there are parameter efficient methods, things like LoRa, which basically use like using ideas from linear algebra. You can basically take smaller rank decomposition vector spaces, multiply those, add those to the parameters that are already learned to customize things without actually changing the base parameters, and also training on much smaller hardware. We already talked about few-shot learning, that's FSL. An important topic we haven't really gotten into too much is like reinforcement learning with human feedback, how you might want to realign models with your expectations of safety, of security, with your expectations as like a person in society. You want to give it some values. Another thing you'll come into is you'll hear about is RAG. RAG is kind of an alternative to training, where instead of retraining anything, you include a document space that's also embedded. Tokens are embedded in the same kind of coordinate system as the base training things. And then responses are drawn from that, so that you get responses that are drawn from your database, specific information. That was a whirlwind, but I just wanted to give you sort of a glossary of phrases, words like acronyms you'll see when reading about models. There are models that are like services like ChatGPT, but there's lots of standalone models that are small enough that you can run on a laptop. Hugging Face is one place where you can get a lot of large models that have very specific uses if you want to get really deep into using them and training them yourself or fine tuning them. And just final thought. So we'll just jump to the middle. One of my key takeaways is if you aren't expert or very familiar with what the thing that you're asking the LLM to do for you, you'll very quickly become frustrated and end up with really poor results. So remember that that you're the expert in this, and that being able to iteratively troubleshoot requires knowing what you're asking about, because otherwise it'll just lead you into the weeds and you'll get in trouble fast. There's a lot more to talk about this, but we're over time. So thank you.
Thanks for pulling this together.
Sure.
Thank you, Lauren. I mean, we want to be at the cutting edge of this, and this is, new, and so there are gonna be some rough edges, of course, but this is great.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren.
All right. That's great.